Okay, sorry about the interruption in the last video. Somebody knocked on the door. So we're going to pick up with the French in West Africa. As early as 1659, the French had established a trade port on the West African coast at St. Louis in what is present-day Senegal. But unlike other European powers following the Age of Discovery, France never played a major role in the slave trade, but instead they were primarily interested in Africa for trade. During the wave of imperialist expansion in the 19th century, the French at first began to move eastward into the savanna regions of Western Africa. Military troops usually led this expansion, and by the 20th century, France controlled much of present-day Senegal, Mali, Burkina Faso, Benin, Guinea, the Ivory Coast, and Niger. They also controlled Algeria, Morocco, and Dahomey. Out of various territories in West Africa, France created the French Africa Republic, or the French West Africa, I'm sorry. Their base remained St. Louis in Senegal, and only there did they allow the native populations any voice in their government. And they attempted to rule 9 million West Africans with a force of only 3,600 men. They also conquered the region in the north bank of the Congo and created French Equatorial Africa. And on the east coast, France claimed part of Somaliland, and by 1896, the French had also conquered the island of Madagascar. And the leader of Germany at that time, which was Otto von Bismarck, cooperated with the French to counter British influence. So the Berlin West Africa Conference is incredibly important for us to talk about. There were some intense rivalries among European nations playing out on the African continent. And as the need for raw materials and colonial markets rose, Africa was actually divided among these European colonial powers at the Berlin West Africa Conference. It happened during 1884 and 1885. 14 European nations and the United States determined a few things. And what's really important to note is that they involved no African political leaders whatsoever. They said that any European nation could found a colony in unclaimed territory if they notified the other nations of their intentions. Effective occupation of an area was to take the place of historical precedent, and that meant that Portugal was officially thrust out of the Congo in favor of Belgium. And the conference awarded Mozambique, Angola, and Guinea to Portugal. Not one African attended this conference. Only Liberia and Ethiopia were not colonized by the Europeans, and divisions of the Berlin Conference were carried out without any regard for ethnic and cultural groups. Boundaries dividing the territorial possessions of one European power from another often cut through ethnic and cultural groups, placing members of a single group in different colonies dominated by different European powers. Traditional African life was disrupted as Europeans imposed on the continent their concept of the nation-state as the unit of government, and these colonial divisions affected African life even until the present day. As in India, European imperialist powers in Africa contributed railways, roads, and other public works to the African landscape. Hospitals were set up, sanitation was improved, but most of the improvements were intended initially for the welfare of the European colonists. And as in India, again, Europeans in Africa failed to retrain natives to use the new technology they brought to the continent. They set up plantations and required local African natives to work long hours at extremely low wages to produce these export crops for European benefit. Work on these plantations prevented Africans from tilling their home and village plots, which is a situation that led to decreased food supplies and malnutrition for their families.